Hello, good morning and welcome to our class today. This is Comparative Education Edu 411. Now we are going to look at some of the contemporary issues in education. Some of the contemporary issues in education. And the first issue that we are going to look at is brain drain. By the end of this chapter, you are supposed to be able to know one, you are supposed to give a working definition of what is brain drain. Brain drain. So you are supposed to give us a working definition of what brain drain entails. So you are supposed to be able to identify factors that cause brain drain. Factors that cause brain drain. And thirdly, but not the least, you should be able to know or to identify six possible solutions that developing countries should employ in order to reverse brain drain. I've said that by the end of this lecture, you're supposed to give a working definition of what brain drain entails. You are supposed to identify six factors that cause brain drain. You are also supposed to identify. James, you are supposed to be in class. What is it? You are supposed to be in class. You did not pick a call. I'm already in class. Tell your members to be in class. So I'm saying that by the end of this chapter, you should be able to give a working definition of what brain drain entails. You're also supposed to be able to identify the factors that cause brain drain. And lastly, you should be in a position of identifying six possible solutions that developing countries should employ in order to reverse brain drain. Brain drain is a new phenomenon that started in 28th century. It can be defined as the migration of highly skilled individuals who are trained in one country and take up residence and work in another. In this circumstance, professionals in whom a nation has invested a considerable amount of education resources leave their native land and seek employment opportunities elsewhere. Secondly, it can be defined as the migration of human capital across international of migrants. The migrants move to countries where they are not nationals for the purpose of employment. These migrants are persons not possessing the citizenship of their country of employment. Moreover, brain drain or human capital flights is a migration of trained and talented individuals to other nations or jurisdictions due to conflicts, lack of opportunities, health hazards where they are living, or other reasons. It parallels the term capital flight, which refers to financial capital that is no longer invested in the country where its owner lived and earned it. Investment in higher education is lost when a trained individual leaves and does not return. Also, whatever social capital the individual has been a part of are reduced by his or her departure. Scientists, engineers, and physicians who have been trained with the available resources at the social cost in their home countries for the benefit and growth of their nations live. However, this is simply left helplessness to the concerned institutions and countries of both South that have been losing thousands of their highly educated workers for the benefit of the rich countries and rich individuals. This phenomenon can occur either when individuals who study abroad and complete their education do not return to their home country, or when individuals educated in their home country migrate for higher wages or better opportunities in other countries. The second form is arguably worse because it drains more resources from the home country. The phenomenon is perhaps most problematic for individual countries where it is widespread. In these countries, higher education and professional certification are often viewed as the surest path to escape from a troubled economy or difficult political situation. The history of massive brain drain started in USA in 1960 when scientists were encouraged to go in order to challenge the launching of Sputnik 1957 by the former Soviet Union. They provided increased expenditure for highly skilled personnel, personnel that were met by immigration. During this period, both the developed and less developed were launching efforts to industrialize and wanted to catch up with the technical and scientific standards of the United States. The loss of manpower was believed to affect the developing countries' efforts to industrialize. Now, having said that, let us look at the causes of brain drain. The major cause of brain drain can be looked into as pull and push factors. The push factors are those aspects which force people to think about leaving his normal place of abode and move from their native country to neighboring countries or for more distant places like United States or United Kingdom. While the pull factors are the which lure the immigrants to the countries of the destination. This phenomenon can occur in countries where education has not been commensurate with the normal needs and where talents and abilities to perform have gone unrecognized or unrewarded. It, em- it emerges when people have been terminated for professionals where jobs don't exist and where advancement has more often been based on family income or social status than on professional abilities. Now, let us look at push factors. Push factors. It can take place, or the push factors can take place when people are discriminated on the basis of sex, social class, race, and entrenched economic and political interests. This can be attributed to weaknesses of school system in training people for science and mathematics based on occupation, and the dominance of secondary and higher education system by foreign-based curricula, which locks countries into occupational rates or arrays not well suited to their particular needs. In some cases, those who trained in foreign countries could not return since they had no places to practice their professions. For example, until a few years ago, Gambia did not have a university and had to spend a significant portion of state funds to train and educate its professionals abroad. Those who became professors could not return as they had nowhere to ply their trade. Poorly funded and resources. uh, you are saying that poorly funded and resource institutions further affect this while there are a few private sector jobs. The migrants compare those conditions between the native land and foreign countries. Personal tastes and circumstances, as well as costs of transaction and time, affect the individual decisions as immigrants. Some are after real income and professional opportunities which were not available in their country. For example, the wages of civil servants in Brazil has been very low. It has remained around US dollars or 60 US dollars per month. If the monthly wages equals to 50 US dollars per month, that is 42% of Brazilians make up to just 1,800 US dollars per year, and only 20% make more than 4,200 US dollars per year. These figures are not encouraging given that civil servants include school teachers, police force, and doctors, including healthcare personnel. Political instability in some of the countries may force the migrant to lose confidence with their governments and future prospects of a better life. These are individuals who may have difficulties because of their ethnic, cultural, and religious belonging or being a member of opposition grouping in their home countries. Migration takes place in response to wars and political and social turmoil. From less developed countries are expected to go back and provide manpower in such areas as medicine, education, engineering, and military. Most of them do not return home but are left behind. Those who sought to remain behind cite prestige of degrees obtained abroad and a good academic facility as a reason for staying behind. Others studied abroad because their countries have small but selected universities and were not admitted because government scholarships are not available. For example, in Kenya, Uganda, Israel, and Iranians. Those students who were educated abroad do not, or those students who are educated abroad acquire international marketable skills and information concerning job opportunities abroad. This would help them to decide and search for better paying jobs than what is in their home countries. The low pay and lack of morale will force them to leave their current jobs and home and search for international jobs. If the home government has an excess of professionals, a limited job hierarchy with prospects of improvement, professionals will consider permanent residence in their new countries of destination. For example, in Spain, there is a problem with the promotion process in that often 10 of the 15 years of service, every member of a high corps has reached the highest grade of his or her professional career. This erodes motivation and distorts the organization chart. Consequently, there can be lack of political will whereby employment procedures are full of corruption and anomalies. This can force the professionals to seek employment elsewhere. For example, in Brazil, 2.3 million civil servants were employed under the private laws. These private employees may be fired without cause and are not covered by civil service pension scheme. Thus, when they retire, do not burden local government budgets. In Bolivia, the ineffective macroeconomics measure and political instability lead to hyperinflation in the mid 1985. The measures which were instituted included leasing of restraint on labor force mobility that allowed people to migrate to other countries and offer their expertise. Political turmoil is linked to the failure of economic development as pressure of poverty, rapid population growth, diseases, and illiteracy, and environmental degradation amounts they produce a volatile cocktail of insecurity. Resulting wars, civil strife, state-sponsored terrorism, riots, and other forms of political violence can lead to the displacement of large numbers of people as migrants, refugees, or asylees. In the 20th century, more wars are taking place and they are no longer causing more devastation. Both internal and regional conflicts based on religion and ethnicity is precipitating unprecedented high levels of international migration. It can be pointed out that over the last 40 years, nearly 20 African countries have experienced at least one period of civil war. It is estimated that 20% of sub-Saharan population now live in these countries, which are formerly at war, and low-intensity conflict has become endemic to many other areas. Deep political and economic development failures are the root causes of African problems. As some statistics indicate concerning the current intellectual migration, it is Africa that suffers most from the unfortunate phenomenon. In 1998, an estimated 700 Ghanaian physicians are said to have been practicing in USA alone, which makes a considerable percentage of the population of doctors in that country. It is estimated that 20,000 Nigerians academics are now employed in USA alone, and more than 300 Ethiopian physicians are working in Chicago, USA alone. According to research reports presented on an international conference concerning the issue of brain drain, Africa generally loses over 20,000 intellectuals yearly. A new report by the British Broadcasting Corporation (BBC) says Africa has lost a third of its professionals in recent decades, and it is costing the countries 4 US billions a year to replace them with expatriates from the West. Whereas rich countries like the United States of America have saved a total sum of 26 US billion dollars, which otherwise would have spent to train 130,000 highly qualified physicians. The consequence or the consequences are worse for poor countries like Ethiopia. This already poor and unfortunate country has been losing its meager professionals continuously since the previous regime. The country has a long history of external provocation and internal conflicts that has been driving out its limited medical doctors in particular and other professionals in general. Thousands of them have been trained in home institutions with considerable social cost and debt from the richest countries. In the past decade, between 1980 and 1990, a total of less than 6,000 students have returned from studies abroad out of nearly 23,000 students who left for Europe and United States in the same period of time. These are either tempted by significant higher wages and better future prospects, or give the blame to political situation, which they say is a threat even to their lives. In most cases, the latter is likely to be the main reason that makes Ethiopians on the way from the country. South Africa, Nigeria seem to have the biggest portion in losing their professionals from Africa, which consumes professionals from other African states on their part. This is undoubtedly one of the main constraints of underdevelopment in this continent. Now, that is all about the push factors. Now, let us look at the pull factors. The second factors are the pull factors. They are factors that entice a person to leave the home country or cause them to be pulled towards another place. This includes the following in case of brain drain. Some of the rich, powerful countries that have not yet trained enough citizens with essential skills often import talents by offering higher pay and better working conditions. Many professionals from the West or the Western Europe have moved to countries to opportunity, particularly in the United States, Canada, and Australia. There are circumstances within Ethiopia where France attracted some professionals from Latin Europe, Spain, Greece, Sweden, and Norway. There were European professionals who migrated to North America due to newer facilities, higher pay, and more flexible opportunities compared to home countries. In most former colonies, professionals moved to their former colonial masters' countries. Those from British Commonwealth went to the United Kingdom, and those from Francophone countries went to France. The booming economy, the booming economy and expanding universities of USA have been attracting everyone. Increasing number of Indians, Chinese, and Koreans migrate there rather than to Europe. The USA Relaxation of Migration Act in 1965 is professional restriction, which gave entry to professionals from non-European countries. Most doctors, however, arrive from completing their education entirely at home. The flexibility structure of organizations and the vigorous leadership of the USA, which attracted most professionals, further expanded the above scenario. There has been demand for professionals or skilled people of certain characteristics. For example, Turkish authorities net lots of engineers with 6 or more years of experience jumped from 6 in 1977 to 54 in 1980. The number of engineers in the state hydraulic works, dam design, and construction similarly declined from more than 100 to 55 in recent years, and most qualified senior exploration and drilling staff of Turkish Petroleum Company left at an alarming rate in 1980 and 1981. Similar trends have been observed in Guyanas and electricity, and in Egypt nationals, urban planning offices. Most of the above professionals have moved due to high remuneration and fringe benefits. This is the reason why most people have been targeting USA, where certain professionals are well paid compared to home governments. For example, a doctor can be paid 10 times the amount he can be paid in less developing countries like Kenya. The high salaries the high salaries are further accompanied by high demands of living in industrialized countries compared with underdeveloped countries. Those from Kenya are able to drive within the shortest time possible in USA compared when they are in their another country or in their mother country. The most or the post Second World War expansion of the industrial economy of Western Europe and Northern America has led to immigration policies in these countries designed to meet the demand of cheap labor. Globalization has made it possible a massive transfer of resources like technology and capital. Labor has become another form of large-scale resource transfer. The developed countries are a magnet for the world's migrant is evident from the statistics. In 1990, half of the world's migrants were in industrial countries. 15 to 20 millions were in Western Europe. 15 to Western Europe millions were in North America, and 2 to 3 million were in industrialized nations of Asia, in countries such as Japan and Taiwan. Now let us look at the effects of brain drain. Brain drain has affected both the country of origin and that of destination. For parent countries, the migration of professionals is more than a financial concern because such individuals suffer. Consequently, if the human value is used, the figures that are produced are large relatively to the aid given. The factor that has been used to show the problem of brain drain and to demand action on the countries involved. Secondly, when a country loses highly skilled personnel through immigration, there is likely to be short-run adjustment costs arising from the fact that efficiency requires optical mix of human capital with physical capital and an unskilled labor. When an engineer leaves a plant, in the extreme case, machine and labor have to remain idle until a replacement is found. These temporarily loose loads can be eliminated if the departure of the engineer. The replacement of skilled personnel requires time-consuming education. The population of a country taxes itself to finance the operation of institutions or study of citizens abroad. This collective investment in education is made in expectation of general returns to the society. This can lead to increase in productivity and greater tax base in order to raise more revenue to be spent on further development and welfare projects and the country as a whole. The competitive selection of education tends to provide education on the most gifted and dynamic young people who are sources of leadership. Therefore, more immigration effort represents serious loss of leadership because the investment has lost and involves a great inequality. The projects for the provision of the very basic technology and medical services in less developed countries suffer or have to be abandoned because of lack of skilled personnel, while those migrants contribute to the unnecessary mixing of technical and medical projects in industrialized countries. For example, the current mass exodus of nurses and doctors from Ghana to Britain leaves the country in problems because most of them are trained within the country. The UN Economic Commission for Africa and the International Organization for Migration estimates that since 1990, at least 20,000 people leave the continent annually. In cases where education was financed by the government, the migrant then owe the government. The obligation is payable through taxes, which are used to provide public pension, medical care, and welfare for the elderly. Thus, those left behind face an increased tax burden to take care of the above those services that we have already mentioned. Developing countries express concern that immigration deprives these nations of their benefit human resources, represents a transfer of educational investment from the poor to rich countries, and lead to abuses or exploitation of their workers. Out migration can also pose the risk of serious and sometimes traumatic economic problems and the need to make sudden adaptations when a migration return unexpectedly and in large numbers. Those students who have studied abroad may bring home techniques suited to countries of study, but wasteful and too technical for home countries. Thus, the home countries loses an investment in its upbringing and education. There are some positive effects which can be attained by the home country. First, to home countries may benefit if the excessive number of personnel in a certain uh, specialty are there and are unemployed. So some of them may leave and be employed elsewhere. The immigration may relieve unemployment and increase the security to pay those who remained at home. Some professionals may remit money home and thereby the country may gain in exchange. The World Bank study of labor exporting countries recorded receipt of about 23 billion US dollars and remittance of 1978, which is equivalent to about 10% of the value of the exports of goods and services. Although professionals and technical manpower constitute 4% of Pakistan's migrant fund, they earn about 17% of total migrant income and third per capita remittance average of 4,500 US dollars per year, more than twice that of unskilled workers. If the professionals come back, they are always equipped with the technical and managerial skills essential for development. The highly skilled people may occasionally create negative externalities by providing the stimulus for civil unrest and revolution that turn out not to have been in the long-term interest of the country. The immigration of highly skilled potential revolutionaries may then have positive externalities for their home countries. On the part of migrant receiving country, the labor force contributed a lot to the development of industries. For example, in Australia, 58% of the country's post-war growth is due to the inflow of foreigners. Also, Kuwait and United Arab Emirates stands out with respective 69% and 85% of the non-nationals in their workforce proportions, which are known to have risen. These countries have manpower without having to pay the cost of immigrants, development, and education. Some of them may be an unusual innovation, have notable achievements in the scientific and humanities. This may increase the cultural and national status of a country and encourage foreign infusion. But the receiving country may receive some negative publicity through international forums. In other cases, the immigrants may not be as well trained as local professionals and may not relate well to public service inequality. If these persons is genuine, ethnic and racial tension may arise. Now let us talk about the solutions to brain drain. In order to curb brain drain for the less developed countries, a number of proposals need to be implemented. First, the home governments need to raise the salaries and improve the working conditions of their countries. The governments should offer higher wages for insiders according to their qualification instead of estimating and hiring expatriates, which is more costly. The government should guarantee jobs for those who might return and recruiting abroad for important public service positions. For example, the government of Korea successfully lured back Korean scientists trained abroad. In cases where there was political turmoil, a change in political setup, eh, as it happened in Jamaica in 1975 and in Nigeria in 1997, may encourage the migrants to return. But this is a very tricky position for any country. Good governance at the national and international level, especially the maintenance of reasonable security for people's lives and property, is essential for economic progress. Transparency in leadership is essential and should be maintained. For the political distressed country, the professionals may be relocated to places where they can be productive rather than confining them in refugee camps and then return home once the situation of the countries normalize. The government can encourage economic incentives on selective basis. For example, the government of Sri Lanka launched a program in 1979 to encourage professionals to stay or return home by revising its pension system. Estimate this was to ease the exchange control so that people could finance the education of their children abroad and by facilitating re-entry of senior staff to appropriate position in government. Education plays a powerful role, especially in the growing problem of international migration. Therefore, offering those individuals the necessary educational qualification in their homes or home countries and expanding a better educational infrastructure may definitely prevent a migration to who are seeking a higher education abroad. Furthermore, seeking alternative measures to return from the beneficiary, such as the withholding of academic degrees without the graduate return, and are willing to serve the people, may be another considerable alternative. Another proposal are imposing heavy migrating or immigrant taxes and passport fees on trained manpower in order to discourage them from leaving and introducing compulsory public service employment for certain categories of personnel akin to the military service as being tied on medical doctors in training. The restrictive policies should be aimed at delaying immigration, such as adding extra years to medical students' training. Various tax proposals have been put forward as government realize that a large number of citizens living outside their borders are a potential economic resource. For example, due to economic hardships, Zimbabwe has come up with a new proposal where graduating or all graduates who receive state assistance are now required to surrender a third of their salaries if they choose to work in foreign countries on completion of their studies. The cash Trump's government has set up a special cadet scheme whose stringent conditions it hopes will stem a crippling brain drain which has hit most of the country's economic sector. The Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education has come up with conditions and a memorandum of agreement for special cadets who access state funds to pay for their studies. Other proposals include one-time exit taxation to bilateral tax arrangements. Another strategy may include adoption of international agreements by industrialized and developing nations under which the wealthy countries should pledge not to recruit people from developing countries. Adopting a strategy that involves transferring skills through network of professionals and intellectuals and the time-tested approach of repatriation can enhance this. Lastly, urban rules should be handled by the less developed countries for certain categories of temporary migrants and require them to leave upon completion of their study or research mission. This is a large and growing pool of African scientists living and working in the industrialized world. African countries should develop and adopt strategies to mobilize and utilize their diaspora. The region can no longer afford to ignore this capital. Indeed, it should tap the enormous scientific and technological talents of African abroad and use them for its own scientific and technological development. In conclusion, due to the impact urbanization and globalization, the less developed countries have to change their models of education to suit the market. They also have to readjust their economics with the global trends and put policies which can encourage the professionals to remain within the country. Those professionals and war-ravaged countries will always face immigration and brain drain. Now let me give you a few questions here. One, define the word brain drain. Define the word brain drain. Define the word brain drain. Number two, outline and discuss four causes of brain drain. Outline and discuss four causes of brain drain. Outline and discuss four causes of brain drain. Number three, discuss five effects of brain drain. Discuss five effects of brain drain. Discuss five effects of brain drain. Number four, what are the possible policy solutions of brain drain? What are the possible policy solutions of brain drain? Now, with that, I beg to stop. Thank you for attending class, and we are just left with about three classes, and we shall call it a semester. Goodbye.